Welcome to today's episode of Bavarian Redline, where we're going to do a little DIY on the E90. We're going to be replacing a very common failure part for these cars. It is the center vent stack. So I'm sure if you've had one of these cars or an F10 or really any BMW from this era, they tend to use plastic that likes to break over time. So in this car, it looks like it's in pretty good shape, but this piece has actually disconnected from what's behind it. So we're going to be walking through a DIY kind of step-by-step of how to remove this trim, access the plugs behind it so we can unplug it, and go ahead and replace this. So the first thing that we're going to do is jump in the G80 and head to the store to try to get some plastic trim removal tools, because I don't have any of those, and it's really hard to take that trim off with a flathead screwdriver without kind of tearing up what's around your trim. So we're going to see if we can find those at the local auto parts store. Hopefully we can. If not, we'll walk through it as best we can without having those tools, as I'm sure some of you won't. So thank you so much for watching, and we're going to go ahead and run to the store. All right, so fortunately we were able to get exactly what we needed to do this job at the auto parts store. So we were able to get a universal set of these plastic pry bars, which are going to make this job infinitely easier. The only other thing you're going to need to do this job is a nut driver, a ratchet, or something like that. I believe it's a 10mm. I haven't done this job on this car before, so if we get there and it happens to be an 8mm or something like that, I will update you. But for now, I got a 10mm nut driver, I got the pry bars, and I got the parts. So let's go ahead and start tackling it. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is grab our pry bar here, and we're going to kind of get under the edges of the trim. I'm going to kind of start at one side. I think I might start at this side and kind of work my way across and get this trim off. Kind of got to get behind it so you can pry it up. Was able to get that side pretty easily. Now, if you do have wood trim, try to be careful when you're pulling on this trim, because it will crack the wood if you put any type of bend in it. Since this car has aluminum, I don't have to be quite as careful. You'll see it's kind of coming off pretty easily. Kind of get your pry bar behind it if you have to, so you're not pulling too hard on the trim itself. See if you can get it pried out. See if I can get under the bottom side here. There it is, perfect. So now what you're going to want to do is, you've got an electrical connector for this middle button here, and then also for the start button. What I recommend for this middle button is that you push it out of the front first, and then once you push it out of the front, disconnect it. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So if you can get behind it, get it worked out of the dash. You can kind of get behind this plug. Might be easier said than done, but give that a nice shove. That will come out. If you rotate it up, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to kind of get to these plugs here. So there's one on the top and one on the bottom. You just kind of give those a firm pull. Try to grab by the plastic body and get those out. And then we can go ahead and put this in the new piece. Now the other thing we've got to disconnect is the try to get a close-up view on it. We got to disconnect the start button here. So on either side of the start button, there's a little push tab that you'll want to press, and that should come off pretty easily for us. So I'm gonna go after that now. Grab both sides, give it a little wiggle, almost all these connectors on these BMWs, if you just give them a little wiggle, they'll come out. So now we've got this piece of trim out. Now I told you before that I was hoping this would be a 10 mil because almost everything on these cars is a 10 millimeter, but it looks like it's actually probably a little bit smaller, like a 6 millimeter or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that tool now. All right, so we went ahead and took it outside so you could see a little bit better here, but we're going to take out these bolts that did end up being an 8 millimeter, not a 10 millimeter. So I'll correct that. So take those out. 2 8 millimeter bolts. There's one on either side of the vent. So if you take those out, that's the easy part, getting those removed. Now what's a little bit trickier is if you look across the top side of this vent, there's little clips that kind of run all the way across that hold the vent onto the trim itself, and then there's some clips on the bottom that I don't entirely understand yet because I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to kind of work my way across with my plastic tool here and see if I can't get these mostly released. So I'm just putting some pressure on the back of the vent, so as I'm unclipping it, it'll kind of work its way off. So those top clips actually really easy to get off. Now I've got to figure out how to do these bottom ones, which I might do with a flathead screwdriver. All right, so if you can kind of get a flathead screwdriver behind these clips, like a small flat-headed screwdriver, you can kind of begin going across and prying them out. And if you put a little bit of force back, kind of found that I got about halfway through taking those off, and then it just came off altogether. So the old one is completely out here. Now just got to put my little bolts back into their slots here, and we'll go ahead and push the new one back on. So we'll go ahead and go around to the car here, and we'll put the new one on, and then we should be able to put this back in. Uh-oh. Fell off. All right, so we'll grab our new one here. Set those bolts right there. Bolts right there, that goes in a big way to the top. Why does that seem to not be lighting up? So that way, so all you got to do to put this back in really is get it kind of lined up as far as your left and your right, and then really just give it a firm press, and it goes on a lot easier than it came off. If you could grab me that 8 millimeter nut driver. So just put these bolts back in on either side, and then you'll be pretty much ready to plug it in and pop your trim back off. So pretty easy job here. Shouldn't take you more than 10 or 15 minutes, even if this is the first time that you're doing it. Get those a little bit tight, not too crazy tight, because it is old, brittle German plastic that likes to fall apart on absolutely every BMW. All right, so first thing I'm going to do, like I said, is just kind of get this lined up close to where it goes in and see if I can't get these plugged in first. So I'm going to feed these wires through this hole. If you see, there's a hole in the bottom of the trim here where you can put these wires through. A little iDrive screen here, so I'm going to go ahead and pull them through and then see if I can't get this button plugged in. So the larger of the two goes on the top. Just plug that in, give it a firm press, it should plug right in. Just turned my hazards on. Take this bottom one here and see if I can get that plugged in. Give that bottom one a firm press, and then you pretty much just line this up and should push right back in theory. If I can get the wires fed back through. Okay, once you get that lined up, that does go in pretty easy. Plug the start button back in here. If I can get that plugged in. give that a firm press. Kind of rotate this around. I'm gonna have to finesse this bad boy a little bit to get it where I want it. Okay, now lining this up is gonna be kind of crucial, so I'm gonna start by lining it up on this side. See if I can't kind of just push this side in first. Now, I've been taking apart these German interiors for a while now, and the best way I can describe to you how to put this back on is take the flat palm of your hand and just kind of pound it, and it should kind of go back into place. Hopefully yours goes in better than mine did, because mine has not gone in on this side. Mine's kind of bound up for whatever reason on that side. So kind of went back in really easy all the way across, except for some reason it's a little bit bound up on this side, and I'm not sure exactly why it's bound up. Actually, I can tell you why it's bound up, and I'm gonna have to pull this. I'm gonna have to pull this back off because this little clip got stuck, and that's keeping us from going back in. So let me grab these pliers. Let's see if I can wiggle this back out. Get that back out. And then this is really easy. If this happens to you and it falls off, all you've got to do is kind of get behind it here and slide it into that little slot. If you can get it in without being able to see it. Okay. There it is. Boom. Went in perfect. So now you can see my vents are fully replaced. It's all put back in. Pretty clean, pretty easy job. So we're gonna have a couple more DIYs coming up on the E90. The next one will actually be for the taillight assembly, so please stay tuned if you want to see us remove that and replace it. And again, as always, if you like the channel, please like and subscribe so we can help get the channel off the ground. Say bye, Aaliyah.